Okay, you ready?
Okay.
Okay. You attended junior high and high school in Honolulu while your father was a professor at the University of Hawaii. How would you describe Hawaii in the 1950s?
Well, it was kind of an interesting place to me, coming from the mainland as I did. Um, it was, I think, pretty much like where we came from, except that when we got to Hawaii, we, of course, got to know more of our own family and lived in an area where there were a lot of other Asians and both Chinese and Japanese and other cultures all living together, whereas in Virginia, where I lived until I was 12, we were the only Chinese kids in the class. Suddenly I was in a place where that was no longer true. I was mostly in school during that time, so started in junior high school. We were I was in what's called an English Standard School there. My class was the last English Standard class in Hawaii. You had to, in order to go to an English Standard School, we had to take a test, mostly an oral test, and had to prove that we could actually speak English as opposed to Pidgin English, which a lot of people in Hawaii during the 50s and even today speak a lot of. But I thought it was pretty much like otherwise, like living anywhere else in the United States, although at that time we were just a territory.
What do you know about your father's early years in Hawaii?
My dad was born in Hawaii, late 1890s. His parents came from China, southern China. They were Cantonese. And my dad's father settled in the town of Punaluu, where he was leased land and worked on a rice plantation. So my dad's earliest memories were, of course, growing up on this rice plantation. It was in the town of Punaluu, which is on the other side of the island from Honolulu, which people in Hawaii call the windward side. And Punaluu is right near these beautiful falls in Oahu, called Sacred Falls. And apparently those falls, the water from the falls, were what irrigated the rice plantations and also supplied them with drinking water
Sorry, she's just.
and water for daily living. Let's see, what else can I tell you? They went to school, a one-room schoolhouse in the next town over, and my dad has told stories about how they had to get up really early in the morning and walk to school. It was some like 3 or 4 miles away. And then in school, the school was conducted in English, and then he also went to Chinese school as well. So on the rice plantation, he talks about some of the workers who came from China to work on the plantation, and they were paid, and a lot of their pay turned out to be in opium. And my dad did tell stories of how he used to sneak out and go over to where the opium den was and watch these workers with their long pipes smoking opium in the evenings. My dad also told stories about going over the Pali, which is a sheer, tall mountain between the windward side and the leeward side of Oahu, and he would have to go take rice from the plantation on horseback into Honolulu to sell it to the merchants in Honolulu. I don't know, what else would you like to know?
I guess you sort of might have touched on it a little bit, but did he say anything about like his family's reasons for leaving China?
I'm sure that it was about economics and wanting to make a better life somewhere else. So a lot of Chinese came at that time. It was the late 1800s. So, and I'm not sure why exactly they chose Hawaii, but I think there were, they got to Hawaii and found it to be a pretty friendly place for the Chinese to settle. And a whole lot of families from their village actually came to Punaluu.
How did your father describe relations between Chinese workers and other groups like Filipinos, Japanese, Native Hawaiians?
I don't remember him actually talking about that. I think where they did settle, just about all the families that settled there and worked in the rice fields were all Chinese families. There is the book on Punaluu, the families in Punaluu, and pretty much they were all Chinese families at that time. I don't know how many Filipinos, the Japanese came later, and I don't know when the Filipinos came.
But he had like some prejudice against them, right? Like, or Japanese at least.
Prejudice in the sense that he definitely wanted, for example, me and my sisters to marry Chinese. I think that's why we ended up actually moving back to Hawaii. They wanted us to marry someone of our own kind. Yeah, there was prejudice. So.
Sorry.
And I think that was pretty common among different racial groups in Hawaii, even though it really is described as being a melting pot, and in the sense of, family integration, it was less so than general social integration. If you can make that distinction.
How did global events like World War II, Chinese Civil War, immigration laws, how did those impact your family?
Well, I'm not sure that they had a huge impact. My dad never served in the military. I'm not sure how to answer that. I don't think they really had a huge impact that I can remember.
What parts of Chinese culture did your family keep alive?
Well, once we moved back to Hawaii, we did have a lot of family get-togethers, the 9-course dinners in Chinese restaurants. My mom did cook some Chinese food, but not always. They wanted us to grow up to be pretty assimilated into speaking English. They never spoke to us in Chinese. and they themselves spoke two different dialects of Cantonese and really didn't or couldn't speak to each other very well in Chinese. So we were brought up speaking English only. I did they wanted me to go to Chinese school after we moved back to Hawaii, and I did go for one summer, but I was then 12, and all the other children in my class were 4, 5 years old, and so I didn't last very long. We learned one Chinese word a day. I finally said, that's it, and they did not make me go back. So we really grew up being just a normal American family. We didn't religiously, my parents brought us up in an Episcopal church. We weren't, Confucius or, so, yeah, we did go to the graveyards of our Chinese relatives, and I remember going when we first got back to Hawaii, and they would bring a huge roast pig with, an apple in its mouth, and so the burial and the going to the grave to celebrate your dead relatives, Chinese relatives, they would do it in the Chinese way. We have Chinese middle names, and that tradition has even gotten carried down to my kids and my grandkids. So there are traditions like that, but basically we grew up celebrating the American holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Halloween, Easter.
Do you know why your family felt the need to assimilate?
I think just to be accepted in society as one would hope, and to contribute to that society. And to do that, you really need to be part of it.
You moved to Hawaii in 1954 and lived there till about 1961, correct?
Yes. 1960.
Okay. Hawaiian statehood took place on August 21st, 1959, in the midst of your time there. Before statehood, did you or those around you hold opinions of what that might have meant for the community, like local communities?
I think people really the people of Hawaii really wanted to become a state. They wanted to, again, the idea of being assimilated into the culture and not being considered a territory. I mean, a lot of people don't, after statehood, didn't even think of Hawaii as a state. They, but Hawaiians are very proud to be a state. They had most of the privileges of statehood as a territory, not all. So.
How did Hawaii change in the year following statehood?
Well, see, that was when I left.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not exactly the best person to talk about that. And I really lived in Hawaii for just 7 years. So a lot of people ask me about Hawaiian culture and things like that, but I'm definitely not an expert in it, because although I considered it home because that's where my parents were and our house was, and I would go back there for vacations, I really never went back there to live.
Did you notice the economy shifting away from plantation agriculture toward tourism?
Well, it was already pretty touristy by the time we moved back, but yeah, it became more and more so. When we first moved to Hawaii, we lived in what's called Manoa Valley, which is in a valley above Waikiki and that area. Our house was up on a hill, and when I first moved there, we could look down toward the ocean and see the ocean. By the time I left Hawaii, a lot of really tall buildings were being built, hotels and such on Waikiki Beach, and you could no longer see all the way down to the water. So tourism really took over and became really the major industry in Hawaii, next to maybe being military. If you call that an industry, I'm not sure. But
at the Dole Cannery, what was your job and what did it entail?
my job was, almost most kids in Hawaii, when they got to be high school age, would work in the canneries during the summer. My job was to put I was called a canner. So I would take pineapples had already been cored and already been peeled down further before they got to me. And then they would come down the assembly line, and I would have to take a pineapple that came along. You would put your fingers into the core. You would then take off any slices on the top that were not perfect. Do the same thing on the bottom, put it in a can, and away it would go to the next person. So,
do you have any sense of how conditions at the cannery compared to plantation work?
Probably marginally easier, but my experience there made me certain that that was not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and made me very appreciative of being able to go to school and do something else. Mm-hmm. And I think that was true of most kids who worked there.
Did workers talk about their families' histories in plantations, or was that something people rarely discussed openly?
I know my parents really never discussed it with us directly. I know more about their life or my dad's life on the plantation from reading books or chapters about his life that he wrote in a book called Sailing for the Sun. He really didn't discuss it much, except every once in a while he would tell a story, like, something he did on the plantation, but he really didn't often talk about it.
How would you say Hawaii has changed since you lived there?
Oh, well, it's become much more congested, like most cities, much more tourist-oriented. It's just very crowded, especially Honolulu. Some of the outer islands are still more reminiscent of what I remember as when I first lived there. So, yeah, just it's become much more cosmopolitan. But, as I said, I really haven't lived there. So when I go back, I'm a tourist too. And it's great being there. It's a beautiful place. But more and more, it's I think become a pretty just Honolulu, especially a really big city.
If you look at Hawaii today, do you see any legacies of the plantation system?
Any what?
Legacies of the plantation system?
Well, there's still, at least there are some sugar plantation fields and pineapple plantation fields like on Oahu. But they're really no longer commercially used for growing pineapples and sugar commercially. I know the pineapple fields on Hawaii do supply pineapples to tourists when they come and visit. There's a big, there's still the Dole Pineapple Cannery is there, but it's more for tourists to come and visit and buy pineapples and take them home. So, other than that, there's really not much. I think it's more a tourist attraction now than it is anything else.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to add about anything?
I don't know.
All right. All can be done now if you want. Cool. Well, thanks for answering those questions and stuff.
Okay.
I appreciate your time
Okay.
and what you had to say. It was great stuff.